Okay, so we've been talking about speaking the helpful truth. We've talked about truth, and truth as being a quality of the relationship between the cognitive map that we use, that is the way we understand reality, and what we find to actually be true. It actually occurs in reality. So it's a correlation between the way we think about things and the way we encounter things. Recognizing that there are lots of things that are true, but not all of them are about what it is that we need. Helpful is that which moves us towards what we need. A healthy organism is one that makes the choices that moves towards what it needs. And so now, having identified what it is we need out of what is true, we're now going to speak the helpful truth. And speaking is about having a conversation, but as we're talking about a conversation here, it's more than just talking to someone. It may be just that, but the conversation is something that has already existed and that we're entering into in a new way when we speak the helpful truth. We're not typically speaking the helpful truth to somebody who we have no relationship with, because we have some kind of relationship with all other beings on the planet. So there is a history, there is a pre-existing context in which this speaking is happening. And so what we want to do is fully inhabit that understanding, that way of being, that presence with the other. And so we want to talk about this. We want to think about this as not just a dialogue, that is a give and take between two or maybe more people, but it's a loop. It's a dynamic process. This thing continues to arise, and we are entering into it in a new way. So whether this is something I'm going to say somebody about the fact that they didn't put paper in the copier at work, or whether this is talking to Uncle Frank at giving dinner, there is a pre-existing conversation that I'm now going to enter into in a new way as I try to inhabit fully this loop. Now, most of us know of loops, if we think of them at all, from logic or from cybernetics, from programming languages, where there's a process that happens over and over again. Everything in our lives is, or can be at least thought of as a loop, everything that arises. Some things are very static, some things are very dynamic, but all of them are arising from some set of processes. We used to think that everything came down to an atom. An atom is the smallest particle. It's not individual beyond that. And then the last 100 years happened, and we discovered that atoms are made up of electrons and protons and neutrons. And in fact, they are not particles. They are a probability that something is going to arise at a particular time or place. So everything, down to the very smallest identifiable aspect of reality, is in fact a kind of loop. It continues to process, it continues to arise, right? So, for example, a university is not just the land and the buildings. It's the faculty, it's the students, it's the curriculum, it's the endowment. It's all of these things together that create this loop, which is the university. Now, the classes may be offered online. The students may not move into the dorms. So the buildings may not even be occupied, but the university will continue, because it is this dynamic loop that continues to arise out of the culture and the people and the ideas that construct it. Right? Now, some loops are static. The forces that construct them don't change enough that they seem to change. So the tabletop appears to be static. It's not changing, although we know that in fact the molecules in it are continuing to recreate the appearance of solidity there. But if we want to change a static relationship, it's actually pretty easy to do that. You know, some relationships just feel like they're stuck, right? All we have to do is show up differently. A loop is a nonlinear system. And part of what that means is that tiny changes in what constructs the loop can make a huge difference, right? So any loop is going to have through the processes of what we call negative feedback, it's going to move to a point of homeostasis. So we may enter into the loop, which is our relationship with someone else, by doing something different. And in that moment, because we're showing up differently, the loop is going to change. But the negative feedback processes within the loop are going to tend to push it back to the way it's always been. So we're going to decide, oh, this isn't working. I showed up differently, but it didn't change things, at least not in any kind of permanent way. So the change that we need to bring is going to be something that's going to happen. We're going to have to do that over and over and over. Right? So ultimately what we're doing here is we're going to inhabit the loops of which we are a part. And we're going to recognize that there's certain things that when we interact with that loop in a particular way, we may actually damage it. Our anger gets in the way, or we say the wrong thing, or we ignore it, or there are various things that we can do that inhibit the process of the loop actually becoming what we need it to be. So we want to look at what can we do that actually enhances the loop. That is, it makes the loop more of a context in which we are likely to get what we need. And if we find a way to do that, then we're going to have to figure out how is it that we're going to sustain that change, because it's not going to stay that way forever. We're going to have to do something about it. All right, so that's what we're coming into next. We're going to inhabit the loop. We're going to inhibit the things that we're going to notice the things that inhibit the loop. That is going to move it away from what we need it to be, and discover the things that will enhance the loop, that makes it more of what we want it to be. And then we want to sustain those changes. Okay, so that's what we're going to do now.